gentlemen, welcome to Thompsin and Other Disappointments here on a Friday night. How's it going, people? This is your twice weekly podcast if you're into hearing about things, all things politics, dystopia, depression, awfulness. That's very much the vibe here. We take the news, we rant and roast, we try to make sense of the senseless, and on occasion, on a Friday night, I may or may not be joined by a guest. A cohort, somebody who I know, trust, and sometimes love, who can help me as I gallivant through these fields of gallows humour. Tonight is a guested show, so on Wednesdays, if you haven't listened to this podcast before and you're just happening across it now, Wednesdays is a solo show where I just sort of riff on the news or sometimes just shout into the ether, in all honesty, whilst sipping a beer. But Friday nights, I get a guest on and we put the world to rights over a beer usually. And tonight I'm super psyched to have a friend of mine. He's also a left-leaning voice on TikTok. He's my friend, Scott Williams. Woo!
Hello.
Scott, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm magnificent. Much better now than I was first thing this morning. I went out to a comedy night last night and I woke up with a bit of a thick head today. Mm-hmm. But now I'm feeling much better and I'm back on the sauce again.
Excellent. I went out last night too, actually. I went out for a couple of drinks, but it literally was a couple. So I was actually in bed by question time.
All right. Well, no need to rub it in. Yeah, I mean, like I don't manage to get out too much anymore these days. But Thursday night is like my night kind of thing.
Yes, because we shared a Thursday night.
Yes.
A couple of times.
Well, yes, you know this, don't you? But yeah, Thursday nights tends to be my, like, I can let my hair down. You know, Lucy's at home with the kids. I just clock out of work and then I just go and meet you for a beer, or I'll go and check out a comedy night, or go and meet Danny fucking Price. But it's like the freedom goes to my head a little bit, and I just, like, after the third beer, I'm like, well, fuck it. I think, you know, I deserve a fourth. And then, you know, fall asleep on the train and come back stinking of beer and talking absolute shit at my girlfriend, who is patient, like the embodiment of patience when I come home the next day. But,
well, this is why I'm single. I don't have to worry about such dealing with other people. I can kind of come in my own stink and
you can avoid the judgment, can't you?
Yeah. There's no judgment whatsoever, you know. I can come and go as I please.
Yeah. I mean, that to me is a kind of fantasy now, because like if it's like Lucy's very understanding and reasonable, but when my kids like want to chase around the morning afterwards, I self-judge. I'm like, oh, I should be running around with them, but instead I'm like crabby and grumpy, and that's not cool. Anyway, let's.
Do you think as they get older they'll see you as the crabby, grumpy dad?
Maybe. I mean, it plays on my mind that will they think that their father's personality is just, you know, hangover, just sort of always grumpy, always short-tempered, a bit snappy, but actually, you know, the days where I'm not hungover, which is most days, I might add, you know, I'm fine. I'm actually quite an upbeat chap. But
well, as a comedian, one would hope that your kids would be laughing all the time.
Well, I don't know. Right. So there's a John Bishop thing where he says
comedians aren't funny at home.
No, yeah, well, he's like, I mean, there is that. Like, comedians are actually the most, you know, sort of depressed
people in the world.
Yeah, self-analytical people that you could ever have the misfortune of sharing a beer with. But
that's why it was a joke, if anything. But
yeah. But like John Bishop does this thing where he's like, he's this comedian and he sells out arenas and he does these big shows and he's won these awards, and he's like, but honestly, it never matters what you've achieved in your life. Your kids will always think you're a tosser. And I'm like, I like at the moment I'm sort of my son's hero and my daughter fucking loves me, but it's like, I know it won't last. It's like,
they're very young, aren't they?
Yeah. But like, what age does that stop at? Because I don't want it to stop.
I think it will probably, I don't have kids myself. So I'm not an authority, but I reckon when kids start worrying about what other kids think,
yeah,
probably at about the age of 11 or 12,
Yeah, I think.
if not sooner.
Yeah, I was going to say it might be a bit sooner because I
Yeah.
remember being like 7 and being like Michael Jackson was my hero, and I wanted to be like Knight Rider. And I don't remember thinking at that time I want to be just like my dad. My dad's my hero. You know?
No one thinks their parents are their hero unless they actually like save them from a fire or something.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, that's a nice way of looking at it. Thank you. Yeah.
Save them.
Say again?
Set a fire and then save them, and then you will be their hero. You saved my life, Daddy. I can never repay you.
Yeah. That reminds me of that. Have you ever seen the it's quite an old series. Tan sometimes talks about it, called Bottom, with Rick Mail.
Yes, I remember Bottom because I am a lot older than you.
Oh, of course you are. But I don't know how long have you been in the UK now?
30 years this year.
Okay. Oh, well, you will remember it then, yeah.
Yes, no, I do remember Bottom, yeah.
And do you remember Men Behaving Badly?
Yes, no, but I have to preface this with I never really watched either. A lot.
Okay, so
I catch the occasional episode. Men Behaving Badly, I thought it was really immature. And I would watch it because I just saw these two man babies.
Yeah.
You know, kicking off or shouting at their girlfriends or whatever. And I never found that particularly funny. Now, I'm not entirely sure why. It just something about it just didn't appeal to me. With Bottom, it was a little bit more outrageous.
Yeah.
And it was that, and I was still probably getting used to the British sense of humor. I think it took a long time to understand and get used to the British sense of humor, and I wasn't there yet. I think, and if I'm not mistaken, Bottom really came out of the Young Ones, which I do know about as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And the episodes of the Young Ones I saw did make me laugh. I did find those funny.
Yeah.
So I think there's a little part of me that just kind of wished Bottom was the Young Ones and was disappointed that it wasn't.
I think it's like it was slightly like, so I only started watching sitcoms like that, sort of more grown up stuff, when Bottom was like just wrapping up, I think, for the last series. Whereas the Young Ones was a bit further back from me. Like, I was aware of it.
A little bit more 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But you could watch it on certain channels would rerun it. And I had friends who obviously grew up in the 80s who loved it as teenagers, kids, whatever. And so they would tell me, "Oh, you got to watch it because there's a guy named Vivian who's a punk and he's really funny."
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And you know, it kind of came from that, really.
Yeah,
I know. There's one guy who's like a lefty student, and he's really funny. And you know, it's like, yeah.
So the reason I bring these up is because there's a sort of a comedy, not trope. I don't know what the right word is, but a thing that they wheel out, right, in scripts for these things, where somebody hires an actor to pretend to be a bully so that then they can come in and sort the bully out and look like a bit of a tough man, right?
Yeah, that is a comedy trope. Yeah, so the kids will think that they're hard.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know, a second ago you were saying about, oh, you should start a fire and then save them from...
Start a fire and save your children, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I should do something like that. I mean, starting a fire seems extreme. I'm going to say that now.
Well, yeah, it is. And also, as a kid in a house fire, once upon a time,
yeah,
I think I was about 11 years old.
Right.
It's actually a quite traumatic experience, and I wouldn't suggest it. Yeah.
And so this is really interesting. Let me put my psychiatrist cap on for a second. So your house actually caught fire when you were 11, which is the time when you say you stopped feeling like your dad was your hero.
Well, my dad was gone at that point. He left when I was 8.
Oh shit! This is a way sadder story than I thought.
I'm just telling you the truth.
Sure.
And what happened? We were living in many Americans that listen to this. We live in a one up, one down. And my mom left the oil for the fries on.
Oh fuck!
After she had taken the fries out.
Yeah.
So that went up in flames.
Yeah.
as we ran past the kitchen in a bathrobe
Yeah.
and a pair of boxers,
Yeah.
and ran past the kitchen. I mean, the flames were just flying out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
It was terrifying,
I bet.
absolutely terrifying. Yeah, so it wasn't the funnest experience.
No. So if
Yeah,
ever there was to be an advocate for smoke alarms and shit on this show, then it would be you.
yes, yeah. Considering I used to be a massive smoker as well.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I think will actually damage the mind a little bit. I'm not good with fire.
Yeah.
Say campfires.
Really?
They're not.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not cool with that. I don't like fireworks.
yeah, I get that it must have been incredibly traumatic, and it's like it's a younger life experience. But it's interesting that even in sort of safe environment, or as safe as you could expect to be, like
How safe is a campfire though?
well, campfires or like bonfires.
It could start a whole forest fire,
Mm,
and before you know it, people's houses are burned down.
yeah, but would you go? So would you go to like a bonfire night thing?
I really wouldn't enjoy that.
No.
No, it
Interesting.
wouldn't be something that I would find. I'd be in the back the whole time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be anywhere near the fire.
Yeah, like you'd be like sort of nervously like shifting over to wherever the fire extinguisher is, just like I feel safe
very
here.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's a very nice little flame you have going on there. That's great. And then if it got just a little too big, I would probably make my excuses.
Yeah,
and
fair.
Go home.
I mean, I'm interested in this, but like, so my early life experience and like later life fear is way more ridiculous. It's like my parents split up. My mum took me and my brother, flew us over to South Africa because that's where her mum was. So she takes me and my brother. We're over there in this foreign country. I get my bucket and spade because it's it's a hot place and we're always at the beach. I pick up my bucket and spade and I walk past this bush, and this butterfly flies into the bush, and I twat the bush with my spade. And then this, I don't even know what the right word is, a flock of butterflies, a nest of whatever it was, like all of it flew out into my face. And ever since then, I was 4 then, terrified of butterflies. Can't fucking handle them.
Like the most, what one would say, the most placid of insects.
And the most graceful, right? I can see that. And like whenever people try to sort of, talk
people
some sense into it. People hold them
on their fingers and shit. Like, because they're that placid, they're not the sort of insect to run away from you.
Yeah.
Right?
I can't handle it though, man. I just can't.
That's something. I've met many people with many different weird fears. I have a friend who's scared of celery.
Really? Yeah.
He's frightened of it.
But then even that, like, so, here I am telling you how ridiculous my phobia of butterflies is, and I totally understand that it is a ridiculous phobia to have, but still, even though I'm contextualizing phobias with my own ridiculousness, hearing that someone is scared of celery, to me, sounds batshit.
Yeah, completely, but they don't like anything about it. The texture bothers them, and it's like people who don't like cotton wool. I never understood that.
Yeah.
There are people that are like actually terrified of cotton wool.
Yeah.
They're terrified of the feel of it, being made to feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nutty. Right, let's get on to some news, man, because this is like I could talk to you all night about like any number of things, I'm sure. But let's try and keep somewhat topical in terms of what's going on out there and what has been going on out there this week. So bizarrely, one of the biggest news stories this week was that the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has been pictured himself, videographed himself in the back of this fucking chauffeur-driven car, not wearing a seatbelt, right? Which is, in and of itself, is kind of a non-story. It's like, I don't give a fuck if the PM isn't wearing a seatbelt in the back. Like, if anything, good. Like, if I was...
Because he might get into an accident and he might not exist anymore.
Yeah.
And that I can't see being too much of a problem. No, I wish no harm on actual human beings, don't get me wrong. But in all seriousness, if I'm not mistaken, just before coming on here tonight, he has actually been issued with a fixed penalty notice for it.
Yeah, that's right. And this sort of takes us back. It's like echoes of Partygate again, because at the height,
he's the as the prime minister, he has had two. No, he's not. As prime minister, he's had one, but as a member of government, he's had two fixed penalty notices.
Yeah, and
that's something.
But it's crazy, isn't it? Because he's like, his crime, if you like, this week, and I suppose it is a crime. His crime this week is that he hasn't worn a seatbelt in the back of a car whilst it's being driven, which is against the law, and fine, he gets a fixed penalty notice. But the attention is all on him and this fucking seatbelt. Meanwhile, Nadim Zahawi has avoided tax, 3.7 million, has had to settle privately, and yet this is being overlooked, not just by the media, but by Rishi Sunak himself. He's like, well, yeah, I'll just let he can carry on being a minister. It's fine.
It's a private affair with one of my ministers. It's not something for me to get involved. Well, I was actually talking about the very thing with the seatbelt with a friend of mine on the phone earlier, who it was actually a good way of talking a little bit of politics before I came on here tonight.
Sure.
And then, as I was getting ready, he was texting me and went, I can't pronounce his name properly. Say it for me real quick.
Oh, Nadim Zahawi?
Nadim Zahawi, sorry. Yeah. And he said, fucking hell, like, he's been fined all this money. And I said to him, I said, the seatbelt is a distraction.
Mm. Yeah.
The seatbelt is something to work up the tabloids over nothing, right?
Yeah.
It's to get people talking about nothing instead of talking about something that's actually very serious, that if anybody else did, they'd be in prison.
Yeah.
They would be arrested for that. And that, this is what all these little silly stories sometimes I feel are very much distractions from something that's actually real, that's going on, that is really corrupted,
Yeah, you're right. It's sort of dead cat after dead cat, isn't it?
Who gives a shit about a seatbelt? Who gives a shit about a fixed penalty fine? I mean, it angers me.
Yeah.
It fucks me off that this country can have two consecutive prime ministers. Oh no, I forgot about Liz Truss. Sorry, but we can have two prime ministers in the space of a year.
Yeah.
Get fixed penalty notices.
Yeah. I mean,
these are supposed to be our leaders. These are supposed to work. They really are supposed to be a little bit higher than we are in the sense of their behavior.
Yeah, their standards, their conduct. Yeah, it's nutty in the sense that, so you've had Boris Johnson who's been fined. Now you've got Rishi Sunak who was fined before and is now getting another fixed penalty notice. And yes, to sort of, I guess, wrap up neatly what you're tapping into there, it's like, I know it seems silly to demand that, let's say, he resign over not wearing a seatbelt. I understand that that's a little bit far-fetched or whatever, but you're right. There's an expectation that people in public roles like his hold themselves to a higher standard. They get, cushy gold-plated pensions. They fuck off on speaking tours. The least that they could do is sit within a legal framework for the 4 or 5 years that they're actually working in Whitehall before they fuck off and make a load of money.
If you're going to kill your wife, wait until you're not the prime minister. You know what I'm saying? And then, then I'm not going to, you know what I'm saying? It's like, if you're going to break the law, do it maybe afterwards, not whilst you're supposed to be setting an example for the country.
Yeah. I mean, it is like, we're basically at the point now where somebody like Rishi Sunak can get a fixed penalty notice, which probably would have been a resigning offence like 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Not even that, 10 years ago.
Yeah, like the idea that a prime minister, a serving prime minister, while in office has broken the law and can now be sort of symbolised as a lawbreaker and
actually have it spun so that it's well, the average Joe gets fined for speeding and all sorts of traffic offenses all the time. He's just like the average person, and that's a way to again convince, especially working class voters, that these people are the same as them, even though they're not in any way, shape, or form.
You know what? Like something's just occurred to me though that's quite funny is so he's been getting a lot of flack, a lot of scrutiny for the last 2 or 3 weeks over how much he travels by air because he's trying to like escape the train fare. Like a lot of people are saying, do you know what? If it takes too long getting a train to these different towns up north, maybe that's a sign that you need to sort out the fucking rail in this country, especially up in the Midlands and North, right? So there's that. So then to escape that criticism, he's like, all right, this time I'll travel by car. Make sure you film me in the back of a car. Make sure you...
Right. And there's just an argument I have with my friend. Did he do that? Is it deliberate? I think it was a little deliberate. Again, something to distract away from the big story. This minister who has had to pay our tax system millions of times.
Yeah.
So was there an advisor going, you know what, Rishi? We're in the car. Don't wear a seatbelt. Let's see what happens.
I don't.
Or are the people running our country so fucking stupid that they literally didn't think to possibly put on a seatbelt? Do they feel themselves so above the law that they, I think somewhere in the middle is the truth. But
I think it's like
the average Joe, me and you, we're not going to know.
There's a saying, and I will now butcher it because I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but it's like along the lines of, don't attempt to explain with conspiracy theories that which can be explained by, in this case, cretiny, right?
Science.
Yeah. So I think
only an advisor in the car at the time is going to know.
Well, I think it's more likely that
a book 20 years from now, on Audible,
it's possible.
It doesn't matter.
It's possible that an advisor is a bit hooky and deliberately set him up to get him in trouble, but I think it's more likely that we have a ferociously high-risk, low-caliber cabinet and prime minister, and they just overlook, like they are used to breaking the rules, and they like the idea of having to sit there and adhere to a seatbelt restriction whilst what you actually want to do is do my slick new video content thing. Like that's what he's interested in doing. So he does what he wants to do. He breaks the rules. It's like they don't apply to him. That's just for the little people, blah, blah, blah. I think it's more likely that he did that and that his advisors were like, yeah, okay, cool. Like it was like oversight. And now it's come back to bite him in the ass. He's probably like read the riot act at whoever's idea it was to do that video in the back of the thing.
Yes.
But ultimately it's his fault and problem.
He's the one that's actually doing it. So, and again, that is in itself an example of decision making that he is having to do for very, very serious worldwide implicating things. So if he can't get that right,
that's a really good point. Yeah.
How is he making decisions for our country?
It's and
he can't make the decision as to whether to wear a seatbelt or not.
Well, it's also a question of optics, isn't it? It's like if you are looking at the world currently geopolitically through the prism of Putin, Ukraine, natural gas shortages, the ongoing threat or expanding threat of China, and then you come back to the UK and you see this is the guy who's leading the British effort, as it were. Do we think, can anyone, Tory or Labour, can anyone credibly say that Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, I hope I'm saying his name right, would look at somebody like Rishi Sunak and go, oh, fuck, like, we better not upset him, lads. Like, I imagine he's a fucking laughing stock, like, overseas.
I think we, as a country, have been a laughing stock outside of this country for a very long time.
Do you think?
It's getting, when we look at things like, one thing that me and you have in common is our TikTok presence. And I watch TikTok probably more than I actually produce content for it. Americans are starting to try to make fun of us.
Right.
Right. And and that to me sort of screams that we really must be doing something wrong. Even if the Americans don't 100% get it right, and we can kind of come back and say, all right, slow your roll, America, before you start making fun of anybody else, like clean up your own house. But they feel they have the audacity to do it.
Yeah.
And that's because the other European countries have been laughing at us since we left the European Union.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
And that's just the truth of it. I think Xi or whatever his name is, and Putin, they look at Rishi Sunak and they're like, you know what, we'll just continue doing what we're doing because this isn't anything we need to really worry about.
Yeah, I think
if
you're right.
He was concerned about the world leaders of the Western world, Putin, he wouldn't have invaded a European country. He is clearly not concerned. He thinks we're a joke. Yeah. He looked at Boris Johnson, but he's not going to do shit.
Yeah. Well, there's various reasons and theories why Boris Johnson wouldn't have done shit.
Yeah, because he's been chatting up all his mates, and the dodgy connections with Russian money.
Yeah.
But again, if Putin was actually frightened of the West, he wouldn't be doing what he's doing right now. He's not scared of the West at all.
I know.
And I don't think we're a year into this Ukrainian war, we've still not really given him a reason to be fucking frightened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
In theory, we've done not a lot. We've cut off their funds. And we've sent over a few weapons, which is just holding them back just a little bit. But if we wanted to really scare the shit out of Putin, NATO would have gotten together and gone, okay.
Yeah.
And come in and...
I'm surprised that nobody's taken him out yet. You know?
I am too. Very, very... Considering if Donald Trump can take out some Iranian general...
Yeah.
Through a drone strike.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you can't take Putin out.
I suppose.
There's a reason they're not doing it. And, I don't know what that is. But there has to be a reason they're not doing it because.
I've heard. I've heard like sort of little tidbits and theories from people where they say if the US, for example, led some sort of Navy SEAL, Osama bin Laden style like execution on Putin, it would be seen as literally an act of war. And because Russia have a shit ton of nukes, there, you would expect there to be some sort of clapback with that. So I've heard that.
If Putin's dead, who's doing it?
Well,
his mate, his chancellor, his vice president, are they just going to go, you know what? They killed Putin, who started an illegal fucking war. I don't think the people around him are that enthused about what he's doing.
Well, see, that's quite an assumption. Like, there are a lot of,
but they're out there defending it. There's no doubt about that.
So Putin is way more popular than I think people think in Russia because he controls its like state managed TV. So it's not quite North Korea because they still have the internet and whatever. But
do you think that the Russians would demand a retaliation if Putin was taken out?
It's hard to say, isn't it? Because I imagine Russians probably do not want a nuclear war just as much as we do not want a nuclear war. But
no, I'm not talking about a nuclear war.
I think they would want.
About if people were actually sensible and did not fire nukes at each other.
But I think they would want somebody like, Biden or Rishi Sunak hauled in front of the Hague or whatever. But then I don't know. You could make a case that Putin should be hauled in front of the Hague. So who?
Well, I mean, that's what Zelensky's been saying from the beginning.
Yeah,
everything is a war crime. We need the Hague. After this war is done, he's going to be up. He's going to be up in front of him.
Yeah,
he's still alive because we keep hearing the rumors as well that he's very ill and all this. And in a way, we're all kind of waiting for him to drop dead.
Yeah. There was
some cancer that apparently he has,
Yeah, there's a lot of people saying, like, at the beginning of the conflict, he doesn't look well, he looks quite gaunt. And I saw a few tweets from people who at least proclaimed to be medical professionals, and they were like, I've dealt with patients of X, Y, and Z for 30 years, and I can tell you that he's not a very well man. I used to see patients looking like him about 6 months before they passed away, and you know, so it's sort of in the nicest way possible. It gets your hopes up because you think, well, at least maybe the world will reapproach stability once he's gone.
There'll be a rebalance when that happens.
But yeah, nothing's happened.
Or the Russians are going to bring in somebody into power who is just as, if not even fucking crazier than Putin.
Well, this is the thing. Like, there's no guarantee that.
Yeah, it's a question.
There's no guarantee that exiting Putin is going to result in some sort of fucking, you know, Justin Trudeau, like, like Jacinda Ardern of Russia. Like, it's a one-party state for all intents and purposes. He's been in power for 20 years now, something like that.
Stupid like that, yeah.
It's really, I mean, the trajectory that Russia's been on over the last, and look, I'm not an academic of Russian history, but from what I've gleaned from various articles and documentaries and stuff, it seems as though, so Putin he was originally prime minister, and then he became president and gave all the, you know, domestic politics stuff to somebody else to look after while he is Vladimir Putin on the world stage and takes care of the strategic geopolitics. But it's a stepping stone, like at each juncture where he gains more power and more power and more money and hives off billions to this guy to hide in his account and hives off a few billion to that and liquidates this publicly funded industry. Like that was the whole oligarch thing, was all of these publicly funded things, like our equivalent of, you know, water utility companies and the BBC or whatever. Like over there, these things were just fucking sold off to people at rock bottom prices, and then they would sell them and make fucking billions. Doesn't it? Yeah, and it gets you thinking, like, when you read about this stuff, you're like, we're 2
steps away from it.
Yeah, everyone subscribes to this sort of British exceptionalism take on it, where it's like, that would never happen here, but we're actually...
I think Boris Johnson was incredibly close to it.
Yeah, if it
and I know that sounds ridiculous, but he has such a sycophantic fan base.
Yeah.
And he could have ascended to that, and I think the possibility of part of the reason, that he is gone is because others saw that happening.
Yeah,
I think Donald Trump, that was Donald Trump's goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
An ascendancy of power to that extent, and I think he always looked up to Putin because of that.
Yeah.
And I think he still holds on to that dream.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Like, everyone draws parallels between Trump and Johnson. But it's like, even you can see it now, like they are essentially the same figure cast in the same play, just put on in different theaters, if you like. So you have Boris Johnson, who was ejected from power before he wanted to be, and flew back. Do you remember when he flew back from his holiday early to try and get into the leadership race when Rishi Sunak was going for it? And then it turned out he didn't have the right numbers, and so he had to begrudgingly pull out, right? But then 2 weeks ago, a guy, I forget his name now, he's a big IT, hundreds of millions of pounds in the bank, big IT magnate. He's donated £1 million to Boris Johnson, thinking that if he funds this guy, he could have a shot getting back into number 10. Like, Johnson absolutely harbours an aspiration to become leader of the Conservatives again, evidenced by attracting these donations to come in and fund his office, but also by him traveling to Davos for the World Economic Forum this week and swanning around like he's still
wasn't even probably invited to. Yeah. Or if he wasn't invited, he has no actual power.
Yeah. It's like, why is anyone listening to this motherfucker? When, like, you understand he's not the prime minister anymore. Like, why is he even here? And in the same way, Donald Trump ejected from power before he wanted to be and cannot accept that and is still trying to get back in there. And I think you're right. I think they both have this feeling that if they become prime minister or become president, somehow they can voter disenfranchise, or they can create political mechanisms that stop the opposition from funcking properly, and they will become an emperor.
This is exactly what Johnson tried to do.
Yeah.
With the voter ID. He did it with there was a couple other things he was doing as well. the protesting.
Mm.
Um, these sort of actions is exactly probably coming from the Putin playbook.
Yeah, it's
It's a right wing playbook somewhere that has these sort of things. But again, until we get a left leaning government, who's to say that Starmer's not going to try to do the same thing,
yeah.
But the only time will tell.
I think yeah. Uh, I mean, I have my reservations about Keir Starmer, but I do get the
So
feeling
do
that
I, very much.
at least at this stage, he appears to be a bit more on planet Earth about that kind of stuff.
He feels like, unfortunately, he feels like the adult in the room. However, there are a few things he has said and done recently that I'm just not vibing with right now. And I know I sound like a 12-year-old saying that, but I just the silence on the gender recognition
Right.
blocking was, to me, a massive red flag.
Right.
Absolutely massive red flag. The Labour Party has always stuck up for the marginalized, and to not stick up for the marginalized, to have most MPs abstain on the vote, I think that's absolutely not right. I get why he did it, though. I understand why he did it.
Can you
He is
explain? Because I'm
trying.
not fully across that.
I think he is trying to get the Conservatives to hang themselves.
Right.
Yeah, because the more the Conservatives and the SNP are fighting, the more ground the Labour can obtain by going, well, look at these two fucking idiots, you know. And
Yeah.
that I think that's that's the strategy. But at the same time, I think principle should have come into it on this occasion. There's plenty of more things that the Tories are hanging themselves on in the first place. This was about people, and this was about a very marginalized and vulnerable section of our society.
Yeah. Do you think there's an
So
element of
your camera's gone, mate.
Oh, has it? I can still
Two
see me and you. Maybe it's just Skype being a bit of a shit. Anyone listening to this or watching this will be thinking, wow, they still use Skype.
Say that, you're a weirdo. Honestly can't.
Yeah, it's still showing me on my end. If you can handle me audio only at your side, we can carry on.
Okay, yeah, sure. I guess so. I don't understand what's going on. That's weird. There was like a reaction as well, and I'm like, what? What's this react thing? I didn't do that.
Oh, that is me, right? So I think I may have just tapped on that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you think there's an element of, and I appreciate how this is going to sound, coming from a straight white, middle class sounding at least guy from the home counties.
Yeah.
But I'm saying this with the best of intentions and greatest of respect. So, is there an element of that with gender self-determination, that this is a clause or a policy that is going to benefit actually quite a narrow percentage of people, and reflect a very, very tiny percentage of people? I think from memory, I'm sure I'm getting this wrong, but it's somewhere around like 0.1% of people identify as trans. And so in the context of trying to get the biggest majority you can, your policies, if you're Keir Starmer, and your sound bites and your speeches will reflect the broad topics. So that means nailing the Tories to the floor about the state of the NHS. That means trying to get them to show their true colours on private education. And that means, I don't know, showing that they're detached, like these messages that they're trying to hammer home in the press and at the House of Commons. Trans and gender self-determination do not really fit into that, although I agree, like I'm supportive of the policy, and I would prefer that Labour were vocally supportive of it. But is there a possibility that they've just made a calculation that they're like, look, we can talk about this, but not now. This is actually, comparatively, what this is a culture war thing that the Tories are trying to drag us down into and roll around in the mud with them, and we're not getting into it. So kind of similar to what you were saying, he's just letting them crack on with their own culture war thing. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
and my point was I see what they have done
Mm.
in that sense. I see it, right? I just don't. I think there was but one of the, to me, from what I always understood of the Labor Party,
Yeah.
it was to stick up for the little person.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can get as little as any more little than this marginalized group, which is being vilified.
Yeah.
And there has to be, if not now, when
Mm.
will there be the moment where we go, all right, this has got to stop now,
Yeah.
because these people really aren't harming anybody.
Mm.
Uh, and as much as you have, which I personally think is a very vocal minority, they're just a very loud minority of people who don't want to believe in it, don't want uh, choose to be prejudiced or bigoted in some way towards the
Mm.
transgendered people, um, or just genuinely scared.
Could be that.
Uh,
Yeah. Just
this
sort of ignorance.
this boogeyman,
Yeah.
uh,
Like
the
othering.
the boogeyman of the cisgendered men dressing up as women to access female spaces.
Mm.
Um,
My friend Stoff came out with a good observation on that the other day. I'm sure, like maybe it's been said elsewhere before. I don't know, but he
Probably.
sent me a voice note where he was like, "Isn't it weird how the right wing take on trans rights focuses almost entirely on this idea that a rapist might dress up as a woman to gain access to a toilet to go in and like a changing room or so?" And he was just like, does he really think that rapists who like are breaking the most serious law out there, that they've been holding back because they're not allowed into a fucking changing room? Is that really?
Yeah, I saw a creator this week who described the invisible force field of the door to the women's toilets.
Mm.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, same
It's
thing,
a
right?
boogeyman.
Yeah.
It's it's something for women who had very much wrongly been attacked
Yeah.
and hurt by men. Um, it's giving them something to fear, and turning them into, unknowingly turning them into bigots.
Mm.
But we have people like the Posey Parker today, who this week, who was literally quoting Mein Kampf.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, interestingly, so when you were saying a minute ago about uh Trump and Johnson borrowing from like the Putin playbook,
yeah,
I was thinking like, I mean, it's maybe Putin is maybe some of these ideas are Putin's, I don't know, but like a lot of it goes back to that kind of Goebbels guy. It's like, sow the fear of like the other into the people, make them think that this other type of person is just an animal. So just refer to Jews as though they're like rats, and like a lot of the same stuff gets weird. I mean, we saw it with Katie Hopkins when she was still writing articles and appearing on God knows what, when she was referring to literally the most desperate people trying to make that crossing as like, wasn't it like sink the ships, and like there's a swarm coming and we need a final solution,
of
and
immigrants,
yeah.
the invasion, so many right wing pundits and journalists were saying and describing it as this, and we had talking about what topics for this week. We had the woman that was the survivor of the Holocaust who
Right.
actually tried to pull up
Yeah, yeah.
Suella Braverman, our Home Secretary, and say the rhetoric you are using is Nazi rhetoric. It's copied, and she bold as brass stood there and went, "I am not apologizing for the things that I said,"
Yeah. I
and
know.
that is terrifying.
And right, so here's the thing about that. It would have been so much easier for Braverman to have just said, look, I understand what you're saying. And it's very unfortunate that your family have gone through certain experiences that when certain words are used politically and sensationalized by the media, that generates images and connotations of what took place in the 1930s and 1940s. I'm really sorry that that's happened. And then if she said, like, I will try to do better in the future, but in the cut and thrust of politics, unfortunately, sometimes things get a bit carried away, but I will try to do better. If she had just said that, she would have come off as, like, she would have given herself space to still say stuff because, you know, the cut and thrust isn't going to go away. But she also would have acknowledged that and shown a little bit of empathy without looking too, quote unquote, woke, right? But she didn't do that. And as you're correctly tapping into there, it's like bold as brass. It's puzzling, like why somebody would pride taking or trying to take a stand against an ostensibly a Holocaust survivor, to try and make them to come out on top of that. Like, you can't win that argument. This woman has the moral high ground, and you're making yourself look like a douche. But
and you still stood there and said, "I'm not apologizing."
Yeah,
you might as well have been Adolf Hitler yourself.
Yeah,
that's how I saw it. And that was absolutely shocking to me. More shocking than, you know, a minister owing the HMRC millions of pounds. More shocking than Rishi Sunak not wearing a seatbelt. Those things, you almost expect those things from Tory politicians because they're so fucking corrupt and privileged. But for a woman who is literally a child of immigrants to say, "Yeah, I said those things and I'm not apologizing."
Yeah.
To a survivor of the Holocaust.
This is it.
That's what we need to be worried about. That's what we should be concerning ourselves with.
Well,
that is the rhetoric and the policies that this government are trying to implement, and it's evil.
Yeah. And it's sort of, it kind of speaks to this idea. So what you said before about, so she's a child of immigrants, Priti Patel is a child of immigrants, and yet both of them fully on board with these kind of mean-spirited policies, anti-immigrant policies. I think somebody wrote somewhere that if both of their policies had been implemented at the time,
they would not be living here.
Their parents would have never made it over.
No,
so it just shows,
it's weird.
It is weird, isn't it? It's like a sort of complete lack of compassion, obviously, but a lack of self-awareness for their familial roots. But it also, I'll tell you what it shines a light on to me is it shows people that, like, how important the Blitz, World War II, fighting Hitler, the Battle of Britain, all of that stuff that they wank their dicks limp over, for us, for people like us, we look back at that time and we're like, yeah, like they were oppressing a type of a subset of people. They murdered 4 million of them, and we stood up for them, and we won that war, and that's something to be proud of because it was good triumphing over evil. The end. That's what we think of when we think of the Blitz and that period. For them, I think the fact that they subscribe to these policies and use the rhetoric that they do, I think it suggests that none of that actually means anything to them. World War II in their minds is literally just, we won.
Yeah. We won. We're Britain.
Yeah.
We're better. The exceptionalism that you spoke of earlier, it's very that. But, you know, I find it hard to believe that these women were not brought up in families where their culture was a big part of their growing up. You because especially a first generation, the parents would have probably felt it very important. Again, at this point, we're speaking for another minority that I'm not a part of.
But
But
here's something problematic, which I'll probably get some shit for saying. But like, you know how like right wingers are always like, I don't mind them coming over here, but they have to integrate. That's a trope that gets wheeled out. I don't mind it when they come over, but they got to integrate, right? They got to
yeah.
speak the language. They got to become like British, And you could say that these two, I mean, could you imagine more anglicized children of immigrants than than people that grow up to be horrendous fucking racist?
So much they've joined in with the racism that they're victims of.
They're fully.
The irony isn't lost on me. No.
Yeah. I mean, they really have become English. Yeah.
That's the bad shit part of it.
Yeah. Let's talk for a minute about, because we've been oh my god, we've been chatting away for almost an hour already.
No way.
Let's just let's spend the last 10 minutes talking about Andrew Tate, shall we? So he's in the news again.
Andrew Tate. Okay.
Yeah. So he's still in.
We're going to go to maybe 30p Lee, but all right.
Oh fuck! Well, we can talk about 30p Lee if you like. He's.
I'm cool talking about Andrew Tate as well. I think it's an important topic.
Yeah. Well, so the only reason I bring him up is because so he's still in a prison cell, and all of his survivors, all of his supporters, are still wheeling out the Matrix is coming down hard on him, and the Matrix is punishing him, and but it's just been revealed that he was privately messaging these 16-year-old Romanian girls and trying to solicit them, and I'm just like how long will this support last for? Like, how long? It can't be that long. And look, I don't want to get slapped with a libel or a slander order or anything, but this is feeling like it's going to end up in like under 16-year-old territory. To me, I don't know.
It wouldn't surprise me if it does. Because sometimes the way of the world and the way of these things, a lot of human trafficking does involve underage children.
So here's the thing, right? Here's a question. Yeah. Do you think all of the talk about like the Matrix shit was him pre-manipulating, grooming media effectively to preempt the kind of shit he knew he was up to some of this stuff. So he thought, if I weave this narrative about the Matrix and about how, people are going to try and cancel me and destroy me, and if I sow that narrative, then when it definitely happens, then all my supporters, all of my little, student fuckboys will all be like, yeah, man, look, he predicted this shit. It's like, yeah, because he knew what he's doing. Yeah. Idiot.
I think the short answer to your question is yes.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that. It didn't occur to me. The moment, as you've been saying it, it makes 100% sense.
Yeah.
Use social media to cover up the bullshit that you're doing by making people believe that when you get caught for doing it, that it's some sort of conspiracy. I mean, we live in a time of conspiracy. We live in a time where conspiracy seems to be gaining more traction than truth. And how clever,
but
if that is the case, I mean, you have to give him almost props for being so fucking clever about it. Like, what I'll do is I'll gaslight every 16-year-old in the Western world to think that, I'm being victimized in some way when I get done for the crimes of me victimizing people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like sort of there's a projection element to it. There's a 100%.
And I think everything we talked about in regards to when we've talked about Donald Trump, when we've talked about Boris Johnson, a lot of the things they said have been projections of their own behavior.
Yeah. Well, particularly with Donald Trump, where He was saying,
100%. It's almost Donald Trump was admitting his crimes by accusing others of them.
yeah, like the election, like, oh, they're trying to steal the election. Like, no, motherfucker, you're the one standing outside the White House trying to stop the count because it's not going your way.
The truth of it is, if you look back at what happened with that, you can date that back to probably February of 2020, where he was saying in press conferences, this election will be stolen from me. This will be a fraudulent election. He was saying it months before the election actually happened.
Yeah.
He was preempting it the whole time. He told we say what we want about Donald Trump. There's a lot of things we could say about him, but he told everybody he was going to do this. And he told them every press conference he said, the election will be a farce.
Yeah. And
if I don't win. I think he even said those words. The election will be fake, will be rigged if I don't win.
Yeah. He's like a sort of caricature. Like if you asked a 15-year-old student at school, can you write me a play or write me a speech by somebody who is a narcissistic sociopath? Like, they would come out with
Donald Trump, right?
It's exactly the same. Like, he's so unself-aware, he doesn't even realize that he's doing it. But like, when they said about the midterms, I think it was, they sat him down in an interview and they said, if the midterms don't go well for Republicans,
I remember that.
Will you accept that is Trumpism sort of drawing to a close? And he was like, no, I don't think it'll be anything to do with me if people lose it.
That won't be my fault at all.
Yeah. And if it goes well, it's definitely down to me then. Like,
yeah. If I win, obviously it's down to me because I will have been the factor in that win. So it will all be down to me if we win. But if we lose, that has nothing to do with me whatsoever. To actually say that, it does make you wonder, where's the self-awareness?
I don't think they have it.
Someone has prompted him to say that. That could not have possibly come out of that man's head, and he thought that was the proper thing to say. I think it was purposefully done.
I wonder to what extent he is prepped. And because I think
he's highly prepped.
Do you think? I think like the vibe I get from Donald Trump is that he just says whatever he likes at any moment that he thinks it's going to be beneficial to him in that setting.
I think you can tell when he's been prepped. I think it's very easy to tell when he's been prepped. And he's more flowy with his answers. Is as if he's rehearsed them. When he's a little bit put on the spot, he's a bit
interesting. Because like I know when Steve Bannon was still working with him, it was Bannon's brain sort of behind a lot of the sloganeering, a lot of the Hillary Clinton bashing, the one-liners,
which he's just gotten in trouble for.
Oh, really?
Yes. Do you follow a guy on TikTok called Muscles and Nursing?
No.
You literally need to follow him.
I'll go and grab him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's the mother of the House of Petty. He's gotten really, really into the whole political side of American politics. He's American, obviously, but a lot of his content is and the way he presents it, because he's a very flamboyant gay man, is if, let me tell you the tea, it would seem that now Donald Trump has to pay now millions of dollars in fines.
Yeah.
Because of the rhetoric against Hillary Clinton.
That's
and has to pay even Hillary's lawyers' fees.
Yeah. Oh, fucking amazing. I mean, this is the thing. Like,
you don't hear about those things a lot, do you? But it was, he does bring you a source. The content creator will give you a source, and this is what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key thing, isn't it? Because it always feels like so much fuckery that takes place out there goes completely unpunished. There's never any repercussions to anything. People can just lie with impunity.
We don't hear about that.
Yeah. or things take fucking years to go through the courts, because invariably these are quite wealthy people and they have high-priced lawyers, and the lawyers just keep batting it back to each other. And so it's nice to hear that things are, I mean, it sounds like things are actually going to come knocking on his door. But then I thought that about the January the 6th stuff and the Mar-a-Lago raid of the sensitive documents. And now, like, every day that goes past, I'm like, nothing's going to happen to him. Like, it would be too politically sensitive to see an ex-president, like, actually like, jailed maybe, or bankrupted for this stuff. They won't want to set that precedent. So, no, realistically, on planet Earth, probably nothing or very little will happen to him. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. I think I will be very surprised if he's the Republican candidate for the next election. I'll be very surprised if he is. I think it will be Ron DeSantis, who is nothing short of a Nazi.
He's another like anti-woke guy, isn't he?
Oh, I mean, the man wants to burn books, and I banned the word gay in school. He's literally crazy, which is perfect for the Republican card. If you can get Donald Trump, why not get more crazy? Get someone like DeSantis in, and they've got a possible chance. But I think Democratic voters are going to make sure that the Republicans are not in any real power for quite a long time. I mean, the House changed with the most minute amount of seats, which is what it does every election cycle. So, I'll be surprised if there's a Republican president anytime soon.
Yeah.
In regards to Donald Trump, I'd like to think that the American justice system will hold him to some serious account at some point.
Yeah.
Whether that is before he dies or not, who knows?
Yeah. I mean, my faith in American justice is somewhat on the floor after OJ and Michael Jackson. But let's hope. Let's stay positive.
Well, I mean, the American justice system has a lot of flaws. No doubt about that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Listen, man, we need to wrap this up. Thank you so much.
We went a little over time.
No, it's fine. It's all good. Thank you for joining me tonight, Scott Williams.
Thank you very much.
If tonight has been a really enjoyable show, then I'll take all the credit for that. If it's been bad, obviously that's Scott's fault. A la Donald Trump. I'll be back next Wednesday for the solo show. And I'll be back next Friday night with a guest who I haven't looked at my calendar at all today, so I don't know who I've booked in for next week. Whoever it is, I'm sure I'm looking forward to it. Big shout out to the Patreons. I'll quickly run through your names again now. Your support gives my funny bone a funny boner. Let's go through your names. Why is this taking so long to Right, here we go. Right, so thank you so much once again this is like the end credits right now of the
I love
of the
it.
movie.
Do it. Let's go.
So Anthony, Pingu, David, Alex, Chris, and Rax, and then Ricardo, Silent, T-Rex, Oliver, Sarah, and Kerry. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to meeting a few of you at the gig with Super Tansky and Danny fucking Price. That's coming up on Friday the 10th of February.
I'll be there.
Scott's going to be there too. Marina Perkis and Gemma Forte have both got tickets also. So yeah, I think we'll have a good crowd there. And hopefully, if my fucking Thursday night gigs keep going okay, then I might even have some new material to do for stand up there. So that's something to look forward to.
Definitely, I've seen Nate do stand up, guys. I would 100% recommend seeing him. He's very funny.
Thank you. That's nice. Keep feeding me that validation, because I've had last week the gig was quite tough. It was like I didn't die, I didn't bomb, but it was like I'm used to going on just before the break, and when the room is warm, and I went on first and it was a cold room and it was really fucking hard work. So feed me validation.
Hey, it is a great comic, guys. Like, I would come down to this. Let's sell out this show on the 10th of February.
Thank you, man. Thank
I
you.
gotta buy a ticket actually. While I'm still under some illusion I'm going to be on the guest list, but no, I know I'm not. So I better get a ticket soon myself. So.
Yeah. Well, you have to talk to Tan about guest lists. I don't really know about it.
I did. She said no.
Oh man, what a bitch.
That's fair enough. She had a really good excuse for it, obviously. So it's fine.
Yeah, the little I have heard about it is
Scott, sorry.
The little I know about the guest list is like I think we only get it's 200 seats, but we only get 10. And then I think that goes to like industry people, like sort of newspaper people or
whatever. That's exactly what she said. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this has been fun. Thank you so much. Make sure you're following Scott Williams on TikTok, and you're on Twitter as well, but not so much. Is that right?
Yeah, both are TGA1976. I do tweet occasionally, but I do have like a bigger following. I usually use my TikTok a little bit more.
Cool. Well, I'll make sure that
TGA1976.
Yeah, I'll pop a link to your TikTok profile in the show notes and the tweets and stuff. Thanks once again to my guest tonight, Scott Williams, and I'll catch up with the rest of you on Wednesday for the solo show. Cheerio, bye-bye!